Hello, welcome to Black Family Trivia, hosted by your favorite melanated family. I'm your girl, Tori.
It's your boy, Brandon.
It's your favorite, Mariah.
And I'm Kayla.
If your family is anything like ours, you know there's nothing better than a good trivia game, especially on a long road trip. But here's the thing, most trivia out there didn't really dive into the richness of Black history or tackle the truths we need to pass down to the next generation. So we said, why not make our own?
Black Family Trivia is our way of bringing you to the barbershop, the dinner table, and the family reunion, all in a fun, family-friendly way. Today, we're shining a spotlight on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We all know the I Have a Dream speech and the marches, but Dr. King was much more than that. He was a radical and revolutionary thinker who called for economic justice, condemned war, and demanded radical change to dismantle systemic racism. He was also a husband, father, and son. He challenged everyone, Black, white, and beyond, to reimagine what justice and equality really look like.
That's right. Today's questions are all about celebrating the real Dr. King and the bold activist and dreamer who fought for justice in every corner of society.
Yes, that's right. And with Martin Luther King Jr. Day coming up so soon, it's a great time to reflect on his legacy. And while we all love to celebrate him in this day, it is important to note that King was not always liked. Matter of fact, it took years for this holiday to be recognized. The campaign to honor him with a federal holiday began shortly after his assassination in 1968. President Ronald Reagan finally signed the holiday into law in 1983, and it was first observed on January 20th, 1986. However, some states resisted fully recognizing the holiday in their state, even giving it alternative names or combining it with other observances like for the Confederacy. However, by 2000, all 50 states had officially adopted Martin Luther King Jr. Day, solidifying it as a national day to reflect on his legacy of equality, justice, and nonviolence. In South Carolina, you should be ashamed because you were the last one to do so.
That's rude. They aren't going to listen to this podcast anymore if you say that.
Okay, you know what? Daddy and I used to live in South Carolina. They'll be fine. It really was not the people, but the government at the time.
Thanks for the history, Mom. Now for today's episode, we'll ask 16 questions about his life, work, and legacy, with each question offering multiple choice answers. So gather the family, keep track of your points, and see who's got the knowledge to be crowned today's MLK Junior Trivia Champion.
Ready to dive into some powerful history? Let's get started with some Black
Family
Trivia!
All right, welcome back. Now it's time for our youngest host, Kayla, to take the stage. She's ready to tackle the questions and share what she's learned about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hope you've been reading up on your Martin Luther King Jr. books, Kayla. Let's cheer her on. You ready for the first question?
Yes.
Okay, number 1. Where was Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthplace? A, Montgomery, Alabama, B, ATL, Atlanta, Georgia, or C, Selma, Alabama?
B, Atlanta, Georgia, because I went to his house for spring break.
That's right, you did. That was part of a really fun trip, and we got to learn a lot of history about Martin Luther King, who was born on January 15th, 1929, and he was born in the historic Sweet Auburn neighborhood, which is a thriving Black community despite the challenges that they had to run into with the Jim Crow South. And his childhood home, which is located at 501 Auburn Avenue, is now part of the Martin Luther King Jr. National Historic Park and offers tours where visitors can go explore his early life and learn about his roots that helped create the man that he was. And I remember we took that tour and it was really powerful to see, you know, the different parts where he would go play and he would be in the kitchen with his family it wasn't that big of a house, but I know they had a lot of people in there, which
And
which
they
is
had a
common
mini
back then.
fridge.
They did have a mini fridge, and they
It was actually an ice box, but yes.
they made their own ice cream and different things. So check it out if you haven't. It's a must see when you're down there in Atlanta. Question number 2. What was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth name before his father changed it? A. Michael Luther King Jr., B. Matthew Luther King Jr., or C. Malcolm Luther King Jr.?
It was, his name was Michael Luther King Jr., but now it's Martin Luther King Jr. because his father and him decided to change it.
That is correct. Little historian over there, Kayla. You are right in saying Michael Luther King Jr. was his original name. Like Kayla said, it was his name and his dad's name, but his dad, early in Martin Luther King Jr.'s life, took a trip to Germany where he got inspired by Martin Luther, who was the great Protestant Reformation leader. So he decided to change both their names to Martin in honor of Martin Luther's courage. And it just shows you how a name can really go a long way in defining who a person is, because obviously Martin Luther King showed lots of courage and faith, and that was the foundation of a lot of the work that he did. He also, because him and his dad had the same name, I know Martin Luther King Jr., they often called him ML to kind of differentiate between the two of them when he was growing up. But another fun fact, a lot of people don't know, he started off as Michael Luther King Jr. Question number 3. Which college did Martin Luther King Jr. attend at the age of 15? A. Spelman College, B. Howard University, or C. Morehouse College?
I think it's Morehouse College because I've been writing down the answers and seeing if I'm right or not. So is it?
It is. You're 3 for 3. Morehouse College. That's an all-male, historically black college. Spelman is all-female, historically black college. So you're right in going with Morehouse. He did attend, and like it said in the question, he was started there at just the age of 15, which shows how smart he was, how hard he worked. It's often said that he was in competition with his sister, so he was always trying to best her, which I think led to him, pushing himself to start college early. Although I read recently in a good book called King by Jonathan Eig that Martin Luther King actually only read at an 8th grade reading level when he started college. So just to think how awesome of a speaker he was. And again, he worked hard to overcome those things, but Martin Luther King was definitely ahead of his time in a lot of the ways that he pushed himself educationally. At Morehouse, he had a lot of great experiences. That's where he found his calling to be a minister. He didn't want to follow after his dad at first, but working and being mentored under Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, who was the college president, he really felt like he wanted to pursue equality, nonviolence, and the fight for justice.
Dad, give me applause, everybody. Wow!
Question number 4 is, how many siblings did Martin Luther King Jr. have? A, 1, B, 2, or C, 3?
It was 3 because I'm still writing down those questions.
Not quite. He only had 2 siblings.
That was on my question pad too, so I get a bonus point.
You should have gone with your gut. He had an older sister named Christine and a younger brother named Alfred Daniel, or they called him AD. So he had
Why
2.
do they call him AD?
Because Alfred for A, Daniel for D, just like they called. Remember I said they called him ML?
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah. Moving right along to question 4. At the age of 19, Martin Luther King Jr. became an ordained minister at which church in Atlanta? A, Ebenezer Baptist Church, B, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, or C, Sweet Auburn Baptist Church?
I think it's Ebenezer Baptist Church.
You are correct. You visited there during our trip to Atlanta.
But I was forgetting, so I didn't know. I just picked one.
Yeah, it was a few years ago, but you got it right. That was another powerful part of our trip, to be able to go into that church. And it wasn't a very big church, the original church where his dad was the pastor, and then Martin Luther King Jr. worked alongside him. Then he took over the church. But just to know, at the height of what Martin Luther King Jr. was doing in the civil rights movement, and I'm sure that those pews were packed. His sermons were powerful. And again, I encourage everybody to go visit it.
His church looked big.
Yeah, I don't know if you're remembering correctly. Maybe you look at the new church that they've rebuilt. That is a big one inside. And the current pastor of that church is Reverend Dr. Warnock, who's also a U.S. Senator for the state of Georgia. I had the pleasure of meeting him once when the Super Bowl was down in Atlanta a few years ago. Great man, and to see him branching off and making a difference in politics is more of the great legacy that's been set by that church. So yes, Ebenezer Baptist Church is where he got started. Question 6. What was the name of Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife, who was also an activist and played a key role in the civil rights movement? A, Coretta Scott King, B, Betty Shabazz, or C, Rosa Parks?
Coretta Scott King, because it was like I saw her last name, like Martha Luther King has King at the end, so I thought they were like husband and wife.
You're right. That was a little hint that was in the question. So Coretta Scott King, just so everybody knows, Betty Shabazz, that's Malcolm X's wife, and we all know Rosa Parks played a key role in helping start the Montgomery bus boycott. But Coretta Scott King, she does not get nearly enough credit for the role that she played, the support that she was to Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights movement, and what she did after he died to continue his legacy, building the King Center, making sure the fight continued for justice, for nonviolence, for standing up and doing the right thing. So I give all the flowers to Coretta Scott King, because she really played a big role in that movement. All right, 2 more questions to go with Kayla Bayla. Question 7. How many children did Martin Luther King Jr. have with his wife, Coretta Scott King? A, 2, B, 3, or C, 4?
I think he had 3 kids.
Almost. He had 4 kids with his wife. Yolanda Denise King, Martin Luther King III, Dexter Scott King, and Bernice King. Those were the 4 children that he's had. And unfortunately, Yolanda and Dexter passed away. Martin Luther King III is still very active, and Bernice King is very active, and she's a minister just like her father. Last question before we go to break. Question number 8. What organization did Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. co-found in 1957 to advance civil rights through nonviolent activism? A, Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE, B, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or the SCLC, or C, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, better known as the NAACP?
NAACP.
Not quite. He was a part of the NAACP, but the one that he co-founded was the SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. All right, we're halfway through our Martin Luther King Jr. trivia. How are y'all doing out there? No worries if it's tricky. It's all about learning, reflecting, and celebrating the incredible legacy of Dr. King.
Okay, everyone listening, take a quick break to grab a snack or have a chat about one of your favorite MLK quotes. If you're in the car, talk about how his message still resonates today. Then let's jump back and finish strong. I'll be in the hot seat after the break.
Welcome back. We hope you had a moment to reflect on or share your thoughts about Dr. King's impact. Now it's time for our oldest child, Mariah, to take the spotlight. She's ready to keep the dream alive and show off her trivia skills. Let's see what she's got. Okay, question number 9. What was the title of Dr. King's first book, published in 1958, which detailed his experiences during the Montgomery bus boycott? A, Stride Toward Freedom. B, Why We Can't Wait. C, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?
Stride for freedom.
Yes, that is correct. And just a fact about while he was actually signing copies of this book in a Harlem department store, someone actually tried to take his life. There was a woman who thankfully missed a very important part of his heart called the aorta. And so despite this attack, Dr. King forgave his assailant, the person who tried to hurt him. He reaffirmed his commitment to nonviolence, even from his hospital bed. So talk about practicing what you preach. Okay, next question. Question number 10. In 1959, Dr. King traveled to which country to study the philosophy of nonviolence? A, South Africa, B, India, or C, Egypt?
I think it's India.
And you are correct. He actually went there to study the teachings of Gandhi, and that was the leader of India's nonviolent struggle for independence.
I learned about him.
British rule. Look at you learning in the school. I'm glad to hear that. Okay,
it's not
going
in
on
school.
to the next question. Oh, you learned it somewhere else.
Netflix.
Let me tell you, Netflix again. Netflix. We need a deal because we are sitting here pubbing you. But that was from the Who Was series, right? Yeah, yes. They did a great series, and those are based on the books that I know you enjoy reading too. Okay, number 11. Approximately how many times was Dr. King arrested during his involvement in the civil rights movement? A, 0. Why would they arrest him? B, 30 times, or C, 2 times?
I know it's not 0 because I know they at least tried it once. I know it's not 30 because that's way too much. So I'm guessing C, 2 times?
Sorry, you are incorrect. So actually it was 30 times. The letter B. It's crazy, right? These arrests were actually primarily for his nonviolent protests, right? So that's just like sitting in on a restaurant that refused to serve Black people, marching, just demonstrations that he held. You know, in fact, he was arrested for praying. He literally was holding a prayer vigil in Albany, Georgia on July 27, 1962, and they arrested him. So again, what a warrior, right, for justice. Each arrest highlighted his unwavering commitment to justice and equality despite the personal risk he faced. Okay, question number 12. Dr. King led the Selma to Montgomery marches in 1965 to advocate for voting rights. What was the name of the bridge where protesters, including Dr. King, marched and faced violent opposition on Bloody Sunday? A, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, B, Freedom Bridge, or C, Selma Unity Bridge?
I'm gonna guess A, Edmund Pettus Bridge.
And you are correct. I'm glad you know your history. I know you probably have read about Martin Luther King Jr.
Yep.
And I have to tell you that I'm going to have you watch that movie Selma. Because sadly, again, this was called Bloody Sunday. Like, they were met with the state troopers. They were just relentless. Again, I'm just so thankful to my elders, to my ancestors who fought the good fight. And it's the reason why we have so many of the privileges that we have today. Okay, question number 13. Dr. King's famous I Have a Dream speech was delivered during which historic event? A, the Selma to Montgomery March that we just talked about. B, the Poor People's Campaign. Or C, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom.
I'm gonna think, I'm not thinking. I know it's March on Washington Street because in D.C., that's where he gave his speech.
Yes, nice job. So once again, this was a famous speech, right? It's the most iconic speech in American history. So MLK actually spoke before a crowd of over 250,000 people at the Lincoln Memorial. And I remember us going there a few years back and us just talking to you about this, right? In that speech, Dr. King called for racial equality, an end to segregation, and a vision of a nation where people would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, right? So this powerful speech not only galvanized the civil rights movement, but also became a timeless symbol of hope, justice, and the ongoing struggle, that struggle that we still have for freedom today. Okay, question number 14. What prompted Dr. King to write his famous letter from Birmingham jail in 1963? A, response to criticism from local clergy. That means pastors, ministers. B, an appeal to end segregation in public schools. Or C, a reflection on the March on Washington.
I'm going to think B.
Okay, that is a great answer choice because he obviously wanted to end segregation in public schools, and him and a lot of our unsung heroes of the civil rights movement did just that. But this letter was actually a letter he wrote in response to 8 white clergymen from Alabama. These clergymen, which were like pastors and ministers, had published a public letter criticizing MLK for the nonviolent protests in Birmingham and calling them unwise and untimely. However, he wrote back rebuking them and saying that obviously civil disobedience was called for at this time. And one of his most famous quotes was, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." So again, this letter remains a powerful argument for taking bold action against oppression and inequality. Again, the radical king. Okay, 15. What landmark legislation did Dr. King help inspire with his leadership during the Civil Rights Movement? A, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, B, the Fair Housing Act of 1968, or C, the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965.
I'm going to think A.
You are right. Nice job. Okay, we're going to go ahead to number 16. Where was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he was assassinated on April 4th, 1968? A, Mason Temple Church, B, the Lorraine Motel, or C, the Memphis Courthouse?
I'm going to say B. I know it because I read this book and it said that he was assassinated on his hotel/motel when he was standing outside on the deck.
Yes, you are correct. He was in Memphis actually at the time trying to support Black sanitation workers who were striking for better wages and working conditions. Again, he really fought for economic freedom for people and really like fair wages. And so his death was so tragic. And he did die in the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. And so that was actually supposed to be our last question, but I got a bonus question for you, okay? In which city is the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial located? A, Atlanta, Georgia, B, Montgomery, Alabama, or C, Washington, D.C.?
I know it's A. This is super easy.
Yes, you are correct. It's located on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., right? In this memorial, it was actually built in 2011. It was built probably before then, but it was dedicated then. And the memorial features a 30-foot tall statue of Dr. King emerging from the Stone of Hope, inspired by his iconic I Have a Dream speech. All right, that's a wrap on our Martin Luther King Jr. trivia episode. We hope this inspired you to reflect on Dr. King's legacy. He was a bold, visionary, and uncompromising in his fight for justice. Keep the conversation alive with your family, or go to the library to check out some books about him. Share what you learned, talk about how his work still impacts us today, and challenge each other to carry his dream forward.
Yes, and thank you for tuning into this episode of Black Family Trivia. If you had enjoyed this one, make sure to subscribe, share it with your family, and leave us a review.
We'd love to hear what stood out to you about Dr. King, or even your favorite quotes from his many speeches and sermons. Connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Threads. We got it all.
We hope you join us next time for more trivia, more laughs, and more of that good Black family connection. Until then, keep dreaming big, taking action, and spreading love in your community. Stay blessed. See you next time.
Keep the dream alive, y'all!